2020, everyone is building their own PC. This is our new studio PC that I just built, and because I had to do a fair bit of research in the process, I wanted to share what I learned. The first thing you have to decide when planning your PC build is its intended purpose. What do you want it to be capable of, and what kind of software are you going to be running? Our PC in particular is built for media production, gaming, and streaming. That means we'll be mostly running programs from Adobe CC like Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere, After Effects. We'll be running Pro Tools for music and audio production, OBS for streaming, and in terms of gaming, mostly Valorant and other shooters like Apex Legends, Call of Duty, and Hyperscape, which just came out, as well as the upcoming Cyberpunk 2077. So I'm gonna go over the build, the parts we used, as well as some other options for either a higher or lower budget. The CPU we're using is the Ryzen 7 3700X from AMD. It's got a base clock speed of 3.6 GHz, it's got 8 cores, which is great for gaming and streaming, as well as all of the production software we'll be running, and it's designed to boost itself to 4.4 GHz when needed, right out of the box. Now, if you're mostly going to be gaming, you could go with a 6-core processor like the Ryzen 5 3600 or 2600, which are both significantly less expensive and could free up some budget to maybe get a better graphics card. There's also the 3600X, which is priced somewhere in between. It actually has a higher clock speed than our CPU and will perform better in most games if you aren't streaming while gaming. You can also build an Intel-based system, which generally has better per-core performance, which is better for gaming, but lesser multi-core performance, which is used more in media production. The graphics card is slightly more important than the CPU when it comes to gaming. Because we're mostly going to be gaming in 1440, we've decided to go with the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060. It's a mid-range GPU and it's the lowest end card in the RTX line. In the same price range, Radeon GPUs will actually outperform NVIDIA GPUs, but NVIDIA currently has a better built-in video encoder, which will take the load off of the CPU when it comes to streaming. If you want to save some money, you could go with the GTX 1650, the 1660, 1660 Super, or on the Radeon side you have the RX 580, 5500 XT, or the 5600 XT. The choice of motherboard is mainly determined by the CPU. We're going to be using the B550F, which is a more affordable alternative to the X570. It supports our Ryzen 3700X CPU, as well as the next generation 4000 series for upgradability. You could go with the X470 or the B450, although some of the older motherboards will need a BIOS update in order to support the newer CPUs. For memory, we've gone with 16 GB of G.SKILL TridentZ RGB, rated at 3200 MHz and optimized for AMD. There are a lot of other choices for RAM, and you'll definitely save money by getting a kit that doesn't have RGB. For primary storage, we have the Western Digital Black NVMe SSD. This is for the OS and the software we'll mostly be using. I could get a second SSD or a hard disk drive for project files, but I'll mostly be using external drives to keep the number of internal heat sources down. For CPU cooling, we have the CoolerMaster ML240L RGB version 2. Liquid cooling isn't necessarily better than an upgraded air cooler, so we've chosen an AIO for 2 reasons: aesthetics and to reduce the number of fans fighting each other inside the case. I've never had a problem with the power supply before, but the general consensus seems to be that Seasonic is the best in terms of reliability and quality control. So we've gone with the Seasonic Focus GX750 Gold. It has more than enough power for our PC, a gold efficiency rating, and it's fully modular to make cable management a bit easier. You could also go with a 550 or 650 watt power supply, go with a bronze or a silver rating, or go partially or non-modular. Choosing the case comes down to personal taste more than anything else. We've decided to go with the NZXT H510i black version with the red bar. As you can see, we've kept the inside pretty minimalist. That's for both form and function. With a traditional CPU cooler, you're using air from inside the case, which is already warm, and blowing it onto the heatsink, which is taking heat from the CPU and spreading it around onto all the other parts in the PC. The theory with the AIO is that we're using the coldest air possible from outside of the PC, and there should be less turbulence inside the case because there's one less fan here. The GPU also has fans, so if you have hard drives down here, that's going to release heat which rises and is then blown onto the GPU. And then with the lights and the flow of the piping and the cable management, I just wanted it to feel like a clean and elegant engine bay. More Ducati motorcycle, less Rainbow Road. So now that our PC is assembled, there's really just one big question. Is it gonna post? Let's find out. So the lights are turning on, which is a good sign. And it looks like we're posting. Okay, so we made it to the BIOS. It's reading our CPU. It's reading all 16 gigabytes of our RAM. I'm not going to do any crazy tweaking or overclocking the CPU or anything like that, but there's one thing I have to take care of while we're in here. By default, the memory frequency is set to 2133 MHz. I have to change that to 3200 MHz because that's what our RAM is rated for. So all I need to do is enable the XMP profile, which in this BIOS they call it the VOCP, and that will take care of setting the timing, the voltage, the fabric clock, and all of that, so I don't have to worry about it. This will go differently depending on which motherboard you have. Once I've taken care of setting up the memory, I can save, reset, install Windows, and this PC will be ready to go. Okay, I've just installed Windows, updated the drivers, downloaded some games. Let's get to the benchmarks. Valorant is one of the hottest new esports games of 2020. It's a team-based tactical shooter with gameplay that feels similar to Counter-Strike, but with the addition of character-based abilities as well. You'll mostly find yourself in close to medium quarters combat involving tight margins and near instant kill or death potential around every corner. This means you'll need as high of a frame rate as possible, and as such, Valorant is designed to run on even more budget-minded PCs. When using the GPU encoder, we were able to average 200 frames per second even on the highest settings.
She's gonna double kill! Oh! Diesel Venom!
Hold on tight. It's time to drop shot and run.
Next up, we have Apex Legends, which was one of the more demanding games we tested, and arguably the prettiest.
It's a futuristic battle royale with gorgeous visuals and fast-paced cinematic action. Most competitive players will use the lowest settings for high frame rate and less distractions, but if you want to take in the beauty of the futuristic landscape, peer through smoke effects, and marvel at the lens flares, the RTX 2060 will do a pretty decent job.
Time to fight. Eliminate all other squads.
Hyperscape is a new shooter that came out around the time we were building this PC. It's similar to Apex Legends in that it's a futuristic battle royale, but with much less emphasis on the assembly of your kit, so you can get into the action sooner, and it will run pretty smoothly even on a more budget PC. Our PC ran Hyperscape quite comfortably while streaming even at higher settings. If you're new to first-person shooters, this might be a good one to start with. Next we have Call of Duty Warzone, the latest installment in the Call of Duty franchise, known for its hyper-realistic portrayal of military combat. Warzone is a free-to-play battle royale with intense gameplay, lush scenery, and options to really turn up the visual effects. You'll definitely want a high frame rate in order to be able to see your enemies in time. This was the most demanding game we tested, and while these frame rates are perfectly playable, I would recommend a beefier graphics card if you're serious about Call of Duty, like the RTX 2070 or the RX 5700 XT. Last but not least, we tested Overwatch, known for its high-octane 6-on-6 gameplay. Even with its juicy anime-like graphics, it's one of the most well-optimized games and will run quite smoothly on most PCs. You will most definitely need those high frame rates in order to stay ahead of the action. We were able to hit decent frame rates in 1440p even on the higher settings, so if you're on a similar build, you'll likely go with the setting that best suits your monitor's refresh rate.
I hope this helps and gives you an idea of where to begin when planning your PC build, and I encourage you to do as much research as you can. I'll put some links in the description for the parts I mentioned, and if you have any questions, please post them in the comments. There's some links to find me on the social medias. Like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.